Who to you and welcome in Who Nation to the Thanksgiving edition here in 2023 as we're going to have a brief little here's how the New Orleans Saints hopefully will beat the Atlanta Falcons, as well as sharing some of our favorite memories. Shout out to the shy Tuttle stiff arm of Matt Ryan, and just having a good general chat with all of you in Who Nation here on a wonderful holiday. For those of who will be listening after the fact, because I'm sure a lot of you will be, it is Thanksgiving after all. I just want to say thank you for being a part of the Who Nation, and thank you for being part of the Who Confessional family and community. All of you are wonderful. I want to say a happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Thank you for helping make me what I am today. And what I mean by that is my life is as a content creator with Star Trek and in gaming, and you are part of making that happen, supporting my family. So a tremendous thank you from me to yours, and I hope you had a wonderful day to appreciate. Good to see you, Creole King, Beacon, Mr. Jerry, Nikki the Fish, James Griffon, Disturbed 1117, OG Micah 77. How are you doing? Beacon Mac Tazino, and everybody else coming in to the show live today. I guess what we'll do initially is kind of cover the injury report, and for the New Orleans Saints, it's technically a good thing that for the most part, it's a positive injury report. Now I'll go ahead and shoot out the obvious. Michael Thomas has been moved to IR, so that's not a positive. And Marshawn Lattimore is still a DNP. We do not expect to see him in Sunday's matchup. But for those curious, for the current injury report, Marshawn Lattimore is a DNP both today and yesterday. James Hurst is back to practice, was missing a practice yesterday with illness. Kendre Miller is DNP. Ryan Ramczyk is back to practicing, but a lot of his has mostly been kind of a rest situation. And then Isaiah Foskey, the rookie, practice. As far as for Atlanta, they're also getting healthier, though Matt Collins was moved to DNP today, and Younghoe Koo, yeah, probably their best offensive threat. And I'm not joking. The dude is actually a very consistent, good kicker. Was from DNP yesterday to limited today. D. Alford with an ankle injury. Taylor Heineke, the quarterback, also dealing with a hamstring injury. And then finally, former New Orleans Saint David Onyemata with an ankle injury was limited. Those are all players that we expect to play for the Atlanta Falcons coming into this game. So overall, though, this is definitely a matchup that's important for both teams. That's kind of obvious, and we'll have to wait and see Sunday for how it plays out. We already had our first shocker of the week with the Detroit Lions falling to the Green Bay Packers, though we always talk about it. I'm real big on the fact that divisional games are not like normal games. It's not like you're going out and playing, the Panthers if you are the Packers. It is an entity in itself. So the Lions gave up 20 points in that first quarter and just never able to recover, though it was real close to the very end. And then the Cowboys just absolutely curb stomped the Commanders, who had pulled it in semi-close, and then that fourth quarter just went absolutely haywire. So we've seen like two different versions of divisional games. We've seen one where the underdog managed to sneak in a win, and technically that hurts the Saints because the Packers moved to 5-6, which further helps their wild card hopes. And then the Commanders' loss technically helps. But again, divisional games are divisional, divisive, unpredictable. And that's what you're running into with the Atlanta Falcons. It's not even about who's better or who's worse, to be honest with you. And this isn't to preface this pod as saying that I'm picking the New Orleans Saints to lose. It's simply to say that the New Orleans Saints, the Atlanta Falcons, are a divisional game, and that this is truly one of the most difficult games to preview, to predict, and honestly, to talk about. At the same time, it's easy because it's always the Falcons at all times, morning, noon, night, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Ramadan, all of them. Screw the Falcons. But at the same time, it is going to be a difficult matchup with both teams believing that they are a playoff team. I think the Saints are much deeper in the we're a playoff team mantra than the Falcons are, but the Saints are definitely they are right there screaming the same thing. What's wild is, as much as we've talked about the Saints offense struggle busing, and it absolutely has, please make no mistake, what's crazy is the Atlanta Falcons offense has still not scored 200 points. Like, they are 10 games into the season, and they're at 189 total points scored. They're 24th in the league. They are struggle busing. They are not able to find any level of consistency on offense. And while you have seen the Atlanta Falcons have some good games this season, like every other team in the NFC South, unlike the Carolina Panthers, there have been inconsistencies. Now, they're coming off a 3-game losing streak. They lost to the Cardinals, lost to the Vikings, and they lost to the Titans before beating the Bucs right at a month ago. Actually, it was October 22nd. They managed to beat the Buccaneers in a close one, 16-13, but have been on a losing streak since then after starting off 2-2, very similar to New Orleans. Whereas New Orleans is, well, they're consistently inconsistent. They're 5-5, coming off a killer loss that just didn't sit right with anybody after a 2-game win streak. But, I mean, truthfully, they have been much better over the past month and a half than they were the month and a half before that. I mean, the team that you've watched over the past 45 days is definitely a better team offensively than the previous 45, but not a better team defensively. So this is the joy of me trying to do this show, is how can we find any level of accuracy, semblance of truth? Can we find any predictable predictions? And the answer is no. Now, I am going to say that I believe the New Orleans Saints win this game. Short answer as to why. Nobody's going to like to hear this, but I believe the Saints have a better quarterback, and I believe that the Saints have a better defense. And to be clear, I believe whether it was Jameis Winston playing or Derek Carr playing, the Saints have a better quarterback than Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heinicke. That's just facts. I'm sorry. Y'all can argue up, down, left, sideways all day long and tomorrow who you think should be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints right now. But both of them are a better option than Atlanta. So if you don't agree with that, well, then I think you're just getting to the point where your level of bias and hate towards said quarterback, that's a little silly, because y'all got to understand the quarterback situation in Atlanta is bad. Now, at the same time, it's bad for the Saints because they have the type of quarterback that apparently Dennis Allen just can't figure out. And that's quarterbacks that don't stay in the pocket. But Taylor Heinicke is not a good quarterback. Desmond Ridder is absolutely not a good quarterback and not the answer. And I'd actually say that Ridder is better than Heinicke, but whatever. They're basically the same quarterback. They're just like 7 years apart. They're like brothers, really. I would say that Ridder's the better quarterback, yet they have Heinicke slated in the start. Ridder is taking more chances, but he's also a younger quarterback, and younger quarterbacks tend to do that. I mean, but either way, I think the Saints have better quarterbacks. I think the Saints have a better defense. And if you look at their overall rankings, that would certainly pan out to still be true, even with the Saints' recent struggles. The big key is, can you stop the running game of Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson, and the quarterbacks? And can your defense play solid? And have I seen Dolly Parton's halftime performance? I did, Vlad. Let me just say something very quickly. I know this is a rabbit trail, but some rabbit trails are worth hunting. Dolly Parton at 77 is more beautiful, more refined, more mature, more elegant, and downright more alluring than most women on the planet. A third of her age. I'm sorry, maybe it's me getting older, but there are 20-year-old thoughts that sure they might be pretty, but give me Dolly. My golly, Miss Dolly. Absolutely stunning. 77. There's not a man alive who wouldn't want his wife to look that good at 77 years old. So, shout out to Dolly Parton, rocking that Cowboys uniform. Those cheerleaders could only wish they looked that good at her age. And besides that, she's an absolutely amazing person. Like, she was a fantastic humanitarian. She's actually one of the very, very rare, like, just good people on earth. Always shout out Dolly Parton. Anyway, back to the New Orleans Saints. Dupree says, it's hard for me to have faith in this team the rest of the season when we decided to not make any coaching moves during the bye week. And I won't argue that. In fact, I've been calling for that for quite some time. And I know why they don't do it. I really do. The logic of why they don't do it is sound logic. But yeah, I hate it because it's conservative. Yeah. I think aggressive coaching wins football games. And I've always said that. Y'all have seen me say it on the stream a lot. The reason they don't make a change is because they are 5-5. They are, in their opinion, a winning football team on top of the division. You don't make a change when you're in that position. Personally, I disagree. I think that if you take a true objective look, you self-introspective, clock out. Don't worry about what's around you. Look in your facility. Do you believe in what's happening right now? And do you believe that that will win in the playoffs? And I don't think that you can objectively say yes. So it doesn't matter that you're in first place. To me, you make a switch. They do not agree. They, being the New Orleans Saints. I want to add real quickly that the Pittsburgh Steelers are a team with a winning record who just fired their offensive coordinator for not being good enough. The New Orleans Saints took a more conservative approach, saying, we're in first place in our division. We're improving offensively, even if it's not great. We're going to stick with what we got. No coaching changes. I think that is a fool's errand. I think that is a huge mistake, and that is at the point that I really struggle to have faith in this team. Now, can they still win this game? Absolutely. But will this team continue to struggle with Pete Carmichael as the play caller? Absolutely. I think we are hard on players when they play bad. Derek Carr has a bad game. You are not going to struggle to find anybody calling out Derek Carr. Paulson and Debo having a bad year last year, especially because of the injury and stuff like that. No struggles to find that. And it only takes a few games for a fan base to call out a player. Sometimes it don't even take a few games. Pete Carmichael has had 24 games. We have seen very clearly who he is and what he is as a play caller. Now, I will agree, because the conservative mindset here is to counter, well, you don't know what Ronald Curry could be. Absolutely, I do not. But I'll tell you what I don't think Ronald Curry is. Pete Carmichael is literally last in the NFL in almost every analytical metric when it comes to play caller rankings. I don't think Ronald Curry's last. And even if he is, then he's literally a lateral move, because you can't get worse than last. I'm not sure how many statisticians and mathematicians we have in the chat, but you literally can't get worse than last. So the worst thing that you could have done is move laterally. The best thing that could have happened is you switch play calling, and maybe in a month or two, you actually see a trend building in a positive direction. But that is what it is. I still think the Saints can win this game against the Atlanta Falcons, because the players come into play. And as much animosity as there is here amongst the fan base, and I will not try to dissuade you from feeling the way that you feel. In fact, I feel a lot of the feelings are completely valid from a lot of, everything that I see, including the people who want Derek Carr gone, including the people who want Jameis Winston to start, including the people who want DA gone. All y'all. Yeah, I think you're completely valid to feel the way that you feel. This team is still good enough to win. And frustratingly so or not, this team very well could win the division and be a playoff team. And yes, that would secure Dennis Allen being the head coach for at least one more year. Easily. I'll go ahead and tell you right now. Mickey Loomis and Miss Gale are not firing Dennis Allen if he makes the playoffs. I don't care. Y'all can throw around softball schedule, and y'all can throw. If this team makes the playoffs, Dennis Allen's coaching next year. So there are so many twists and turns in this little road this season. And yeah, Picking Pony says, worse or last? You can be a worse last. I mean, I guess you can technically, statistically, get worse. But I think the product doesn't really change if you were to, quote unquote, get worse. I think this offense is just bad. And when this offense is bad, they lose. When this offense is average, they tend to win. It's not a base. I mean, I guess, because I know TJ was here earlier. Maybe we can argue the Colts game. One game, the offense was good, and they were able to, win because of the offense. I would still say that was not a complete offensive game against the Colts. There was still inconsistency in that game. But the defense has been the primary factor. The defense has basically done what it's done all year long, which is they've only allowed a team to score 30 or more points one time. They have struggled more recently, as in the past 4 games, they've given up 27 points or more 4 times. That's no bueno. That's got to change. But beyond that, the defense is the selling point on this team. It's Dennis Allen's thing. So it is what it is. Offense has got to improve, and that's why I've been so vocal the past 2 months of how the New Orleans Saints should at least make the attempt to see Ronald Curry is a better option. Cree says, based on the stats I saw for Pete, I would rather roll the dice on any OC in college than keep Pete. It's that bad. Now, I'm assuming you're referring to a chart that has made its way around analytical Twitter and thus has managed to find its way onto forums and different things and the like, which is very clear that Pete Carmichael is not only in last place, but he is in last place, like the very bottom, like the worst, as in the literal worst. And yeah, I agree. And it comes down to, and I've shared it on stream before. I'll go ahead and put it back on the screen for those who don't remember it. But the premise around it was using the easy button. And the idea around the easy button is basically how the modern NFL works, which is using motion and using play action, RPOs, the screen game, etc. And for those who are watching live, you can kind of see the chart. Where's Pete Carmichael? Oh, don't worry. He's at the very bottom left with nobody near him. To add to this, Matt Canada, who was fired, was one of the worst and is still significantly higher than Pete Carmichael. Now, this is just one aspect of the offense, right? This is just how much they're using RPOs, how much play action, how much motion screen. Basically, the New Orleans Saints don't use it. Simple answer. They don't use those things, and it hurts them. Now, look at the best offenses in the league, and look at the best offensive minds that we're always talking about. McDaniels, the Shanahans, the O'Connells, the Ben Johnsons. Wow, look at them, the Sean McVays. Look, Bobby Slowick. Look at all these people using the quote-unquote easy button. Now, Sean Payton does not use as much as others, but he still manages to be a better overall play caller, and he's still on the right side of the graph. He's just not as good as arguably he was at one time. Maybe Father Time is catching up to him like it did catch up to Bill Belichick. But the point is, if you've seen this chart, it's simply showing you what many of you can see with your own eyeballs. There's not a lot of ingenuity. There's not a lot of genius when it comes to the Saints and their offense right now, and that is why it's not performing up to scale. Vlad says, my biggest complaint with Pete is that he doesn't give Taysom enough touches, and it doesn't use Taysom and AK together on the field that much. I agree. You have absolutely got to find a way to get the ball into your playmakers' hands. That has got to be offensive coordinating 101. Who are the playmakers for the New Orleans Saints? Chris Olave, Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara. That's really it. You can throw in Rashid Shaheed, but Rashid Shaheed is limited into plays like jet sweeps, the 7 through 9 routes. He's not a complete playmaker, but that isn't to besmirch Rashid Shaheed. He is getting better each year, but Rashid Shaheed is not a complete wide receiver. But he is getting better, right? But you're only like true blue, full-on 3 playmakers: Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, Chris Olave. Kendre Miller could technically make his way into that list if he was healthy. Michael Thomas is not a playmaker, though he can be a reliable option, though now he's on IR. That's it. And Juwan Johnson's been struggling with injury, so you've not gotten to see him be what you had hoped for him to be this season. I remember, we were coming in, we were doing predictions before the year, and a lot of us, myself included, had looked at Juwan Johnson having like 750 yards type of a year. Juwan Johnson is not currently heading anywhere near that direction. Now, I am hoping that the more he gets, reps under his belt, the better he ends up looking. But right now, Juwan Johnson has 97 yards and 1 TD on 14 receptions. And that is just not what you expected. And even if he really balls out the second half of the season, he probably ends up finishing the year with 500-600 yards. And I think that big injury, or at least that injury, was bigger than we thought it would be. He might end up with similar stats than last year, but he's not going to come close to that 700-800 yard season that I thought that he was going to have. On the other hand, Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave both on pace for around 1,000 yards. Hella impressive. Had Michael Thomas not gotten injured with the knee injury, he was actually on pace for about 900 yards. Now he's going to miss a minimum of 4 games. So, yeah, there's good and bad here. But, yeah. And is A.T. Perry a playmaker? No, A.T. Perry has caught, 2 passes for 38 yards. A.T. Perry is not a playmaker. Can A.T. Perry be a guy at some point? Absolutely. A.T. Perry can eventually be somebody. But A.T. Perry is definitely not anybody right now. Who's going to benefit the most from MT's targets, if anyone? The problem to answering that is who's going to catch balls over the middle of the field. The answer should be Foster Moreau / Taysom Hill / Juwan Johnson. Also A.T. Perry. But the focal point of those names should be Juwan Johnson if he truly is good to go. Because the biggest thing you lose with Michael Thomas is the only guy who was any level of consistent over the middle of the field. And even then, Michael Thomas wasn't old Michael Thomas. Even then, he wasn't like old school Michael Thomas dominating over the middle of the field. He was just doing good. He was doing well, right? Michael Thomas would have ended the season like middle of the pack amongst wide receivers, and honestly would have been fantastic. That really would have been impressive considering everything that he's gone through. So it's just one of those where, again, can Pete Carmichael make it happen? Can he draw up the plays to really fit that? So I don't really know. And honestly, I lean towards no. I still think the Saints can win. But we haven't seen any level of consistency of getting playmakers the ball. Let's use Taysom Hill as an example. I see somebody in chat asking about his playing time because the amount of time that he gets is pretty consistent. But just because they have him on the field doesn't mean they use him. What do I mean by that? Taysom Hill has actually been on the field for 42% of the offensive snaps this season. By comparison, last year he was on the field 33%. So he's actually been on the field 9% more this year than last year. Yet, it feels like he's being misused or underused in key moments and roles. Now, when Sean Payton was here in 2020, 2021, he was there. He was on the field 44 and 56%, but keep in mind that there are some starts at quarterback there. So that's going to offset your numbers a little bit. But last year, so just comparing apples to apples, last year 33%, this year 42%. So it would seem to indicate that Pete Carmichael is trying to use Taysom Hill. He just doesn't know what to do with him once he's on the field, which is a head scratcher, right? And we've seen the metric or the analytic that gets posted, and I'll go ahead and say this. It is a bit misleading because if you just run Taysom Hill 8 times, you're not going to win the football game just based on that. But when Taysom Hill gets 10 to 15 touches, the New Orleans Saints win. That's not coincidental. Now, how you get him those touches, sure, that matters. But if you simply are going by how often he touches the ball, let's go through history. 2020 against Atlanta, 14 carries, won the game. 2023 against Philly. This was January 2023, by the way. Against Philly, won the game, 14 carries. Against Carolina, 2022, 12 carries, won the game. Against the Dallas Cowboys in 2021, lost that one, but 2021, same year, beat both the Jets and Tampa, running 11 times. 2023 against Chicago, ran 11 times, won the game. 2020 against Atlanta and Denver, ran 10 times both those games, and won. That doesn't count the passes or the receiving yards. Clearly, getting the ball in his hands is good. He makes plays. Again, I do not think that just arbitrarily getting to a number guarantees the New Orleans Saints a win. You have to do it well situationally, right? You have to actually put him in positions to have success. That said, if you utilize your playmakers, come to find out you can win football games. Who knew? Who knew? Next thing you're going to tell me to win a football game, you just got to score more points than the opponent. I thought you just had to have better players on paper. Apparently, you actually have to win. Wow. Shocker. But anyway, distractions aside, they actually have Taysom Hill on the field more, but you need to use him. And that's what it comes down to the Falcons game here. The key to beating the Falcons is simply using your playmakers. Defense has got to learn how to corral a quarterback who can move, and the offense simply needs to keep it simple, stupid. The KISS method. Break it down to basics. Get the ball to A.K. Olave, Juwan Johnson, Taysom. I know I'm breaking it down to simplicity, but that's really what New Orleans needs. New Orleans needs to get to basics and then just focus on what works. If you have a guy like Taysom Hill on the field, basically half the offensive snaps, and yet he is getting a lower portion of total touches than he was getting previously, that's a problem. Why do I say that, by the way? Because, for example, did you know my man Taysom Hill, even though he's played 42% of the snaps, which is 3 300 snaps. A lot of snaps. 300 offensive snaps. Taysom Hill has run the ball a whopping 50 times. That's it. Now, again, that's still a significant number. But for a guy that's like one of your only playmakers, that's it. Now, he has caught 22 receptions. But let's go game logs. This is where it gets squirrely. And this is where I just don't understand Pete Carmichael. Here's where it gets really squirrely. Against Minnesota, he had 3 touches, 2 receptions, 1 carry. That's it. Now, against Chicago, the week before, did really well. They won the game. You know how many touches he had that game? 15. Actually, 16 because he threw a pass. 16 because he threw that touchdown pass. 16 touches. What about against Indianapolis? Oh, he had 13 touches. Well, that seems important. Oh, wait. Against Houston, only 1 carry and 1 pass. Now, they did target him in the short area of the game late in the game, so that kind of inflated his numbers a little bit, but 1 carry. Oh, man. Seems like playmaker didn't get used. Oh, shocker. They lost. There's a pattern there. Using Taysom Hill generally correlates to winning because you're using a playmaker, by the way. You can insert that name in Alvin Kamara because if we go to the stats of Alvin Kamara not being utilized, shocker, Saints lose. It's kind of important to use your playmakers. So, kind of important to utilize your playmakers. Now, Tankathon says Derek Carr is racking up stats like LeBron without any meaningful wins. Well, wins aren't a quarterback stats. I don't really care about that. I mean, I care about winning. I just don't really care about wins being attributed to Derek Carr. I will say this. I don't care who the quarterback is. I'm going to repeat this for the rest of the year. This coaching staff continues to suck. Doesn't matter who's the quarterback. This is from like one of the few Jameis Winston stands when he got brought to this team. Most people didn't want Winston. Hell, I actually liked Teddy when he was here. And most people trash talk Teddy. By most people, y'all know exactly who I'm talking about. If you have to ask, then don't worry about it. I don't honestly think it matters till this coaching staff gets better, till Pete Carmichael starts sucking. Do we go with the no-huddle offense? Honestly, normally I would say no, that's stupid. I mean, I wouldn't call you stupid, Vlad. I would say no, you need an offense that has a little more depth. But truthfully, heck it. Yeah, let the players call their own plays. I'll just be honest. Take the person that you know that hates Derek Carr the most. Take the person that you know that hates Matt Ryan the most. Take the person that you know that hates LeBron James the most. Whatever. That's me to Pete Carmichael. Honest to God. That's me to Pete Carmichael. Like, I legitimately believe that just letting the players themselves call plays on the field would be better than Pete Carmichael calling the plays. And I probably am being a little dramatic there, and it probably isn't that bad. But honestly, yeah, do it. What's the worst that happen? You lose again? Well, you've been doing that all year anyway. You're 5-5, and I don't even give a lot of credit to the wins because it's not like you were beating the Eagles or the Chiefs. So, yeah, just like Futt said, the 6-4 Steelers fired Matt Canada, yet the 5-5 Saints are just more than happy to be content and sit on their laurels and continue to do what they've always done. So, yeah. That annoys me. But it's a holiday. It's Thanksgiving. I'm very thankful for y'all. So we're not going to be too negative today, and we're not going to have a long episode today. But we will go ahead and get in score predictions because I'm very curious. What are the score predictions for all of y'all for this game? I do believe the Saints win. I believe the Saints are going to win this game 27-24. And I do think that the Saints are a better team, and it comes down to, it doesn't matter if it was Winston or Carr, I'd say the same thing. They have a better quarterback, and they have a better defense. Both coaching staffs for Atlanta and New Orleans are boo-boo garbage, but I think New Orleans is a better team. I think New Orleans, as a locker room, really does believe they're a playoff team and wants to win the division. So, Accidental Geniuses 31-17 Saints. I could see it, but generally, divisional games aren't 2-touchdown games, but it could happen. Randy says 28-3. I'm here for it. He also said 28-17 to be a real one. Vlad says 23-21. Nikki says, I don't know, and that's completely okay. That is completely okay. Mr. Don says Dennis Allen wants to be right more than he wants to win. I think he truly believes that him being right leads to wins. And I'm not trying to insult him and call him a narcissist, because if you ever talk to a lot of NFL head coaches and great players, I mean, they actually are kind of arrogant, but usually it's because they can back it up because they're really good at their job, right? And honestly, DA is really good as a defensive coordinator. I just don't really think he's really good as a head coach. I think his career record speaks to that, but more importantly, his Saints record speaks to that. So it's very curious to see what's going to happen, because if the Saints make the playoffs, they're definitely not getting rid of DA, but they still could get rid of Pete Carmichael, right? But says, I don't think this team is capable of winning 3 games in a row. Oh, neither do I. The reason I am so adamant that the Saints have to win this game is because after this game, they play the Detroit Lions, and the Detroit Lions just lost a emotional banger versus the Packers. If you think Detroit's not coming in with an extra, 3 days rest with some just oomph in their step, oh, they're coming into New Orleans to dig some graves and put some bodies in some bags. You better beat Atlanta, because I'll go ahead and give you my score prediction for Detroit now. Detroit wins 35-20. There you go. I think Detroit's pissed. They just lost a close one to Green Bay, and they're going to come in and try to curb stomp New Orleans. You got to, if you're New Orleans, beat Atlanta, because that means you're 6-6 after week 12 or week 13. You got to beat Atlanta, because if you don't, I don't see them beating the Lions. It could happen. I don't see it. Nick says Saints wins, but do not score more points. Love that. Dupree says 17-10. Atlanta will run the air out the ball, and Taysom will have a big game. Love it. It's crazy how Loomis got the better roster better than last year, but the record is just as bad, probably worse. Well, I can't say that accidentally, because the record is better. Last year, through 10 games, this team was not 5-5. They were worse than they are now. That said, I do agree that this roster should be much better than 500. Is Detroit, they always find a banana peel? I don't know. I really believe in what Dan Campbell's doing up in Detroit. I really respect Johnson as an offensive coordinator. I just know Sean would be at Players Next for being the most penalized team in the league. Don't see it with Dennis. Fair. Creole says 13-9 Saints. That would be a win. Yeah, a heck of a boring win, but it would be a win. I'm here for it. I love defensive games. Someone that lives in the Detroit Metro, I want us to win so bad, but I don't see it. Yeah, I think Detroit is just an all-around better team. But, hey, I would love New Orleans to make me eat crow. Just like Zion Williamson and the Pelicans have been making me eat pelican, and I love it. I'm here for it. I absolutely hope that is what happens. Absolutely hope that's what happens. Well, guys, we're going to wrap up the podcast for the night. A little bit of a shorter one, but it is a holiday, so I hope you're having an amazing Thanksgiving. Who dat? God bless. I appreciate every single one of you. Hit me up on Twitter or Discord if you have any questions. I will be with y'all following the game this upcoming Sunday, and I hope you have an amazing day. Who dat? God bless. We'll catch you on the next one. Deuces. Happy Thanksgiving, and have an amazing rest of your week.